Hi, Paige. Thank you for being here.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, I am so pumped because your content has helped me so much and I resonate with so many things that you talk about. And I know that people are going to just love the conversation that we have today. So, the first thing I'd like to do is just to learn a little bit more about you and about what you're doing, your mission, and how you serve women who are overspending.
Yeah. I'll definitely kind of take you through it. I feel like probably a lot of people that you talk to, I definitely like what I do now and the birth of overcoming overspending is very autobiographical. Like
Yes.
overspending, compulsive buying is something that I myself really, really struggled with in my early 20s. And that's kind of where like not to go back too far and go too in the weeds, but that's kind of where this all begins is right after, and this is like more than a decade ago, but after graduating from college, I kind of for the first time in my life actually started to make money, like
Mhm.
more than just like the waitress job and actually having money in my account and not just being the broke college student, making an
Yes.
actual salary. And I actually, the first job that I got out of college was back in my hometown of Dallas, Texas. I was in student loan debt. I had no savings. I had no money. My parents were like, listen, why don't you come and live with us for a year, make a dent in these loans, build up some savings, just work your butt off? Because I was of all places working at a car dealership in sales. So it was a very time demanding job. So they were like, you go work. And when you're not working, you come here, save, make as much financial progress as you can in a year. And essentially everything that I was like supposed to do that year that sounded like really nice and pretty on paper, I basically did the exact opposite of that. I pretty much spent it all away and virtually like having no expenses, right? Again, I was living at home with my parents. They were very generous to really not charge me anything. I was very privileged to be in that situation. The dealership I was working at, they gave me a car to drive. They paid for the gas, the
Wow, how
insurance. So,
cool.
I mean, less like taxes and health insurance that was taken out of my paycheck.
Yeah.
At the end of that year, when my parents came to me and they said, okay, time for you to go, it's been a year. I couldn't even afford a security deposit on an apartment to move out because I had literally spent it all. And it really started with me. I remember like going to the mall for the first time after my first paycheck hit and just the rush and the euphoria I felt of actually being able to go to a mall and being able to walk into like all of these stores that I grew up, it's definitely not a Charles Dickens tale. I would say I grew up like lower middle class, but I was always like growing up, which we can kind of dive into this more because this plays huge into
Yes.
overspending, but I was always kind of in the lower kind of bottom of the barrel of our socioeconomic circle. So it was like all of my friends lived in bigger houses than me, like their families had more money. They would get to go shop at places like Hollister
Mhm.
and all of these stores that my mom would be like, no, like, sorry, we're going to Sears to buy your back to school
Yeah.
clothes. So it
Yeah.
was like this experience. Oh my God, I have my own money and I can go into Nordstrom's. I can go into Anthropologie and actually shop at places like this. And what I told myself was going to just be like a one-time shopping trip to like get clothes for my new job
Yeah.
really turned into that year like a compulsion, like a compulsive behavior where I would literally multiple times a week on my lunch break because turns out, shocker, I didn't really enjoy selling cars that much. So shopping kind of became my escape in my day to day. I would wait till lunch. I would run out of the dealership. I would go up to the mall and I would just casually, like multiple times a week, drop several $100s, J. Crew, Banana Republic, Nordstrom. And so people are like, oh, you couldn't have spent it all. I'm like, I did. I did.
I was gonna
I
ask
pretty
you
much
where it all went.
yeah, I'm like, "Nope, I pretty much did." And so anyways, that was kind of like my wake up moment where I just kind of had this come to Jesus moment with myself where I was like, if I keep doing this,
Mhm.
I am going to be broke for the rest of my life, right? Like just
Yeah.
the shame that I felt in that moment of having to tell my parents like I can't. Like I don't have the money to and they're looking at me like, "What do you mean you don't have the money to?"
Mhm.
So when I started to go out and actually figure out, like, okay, how do I do this? How do I solve for this? What I started to realize that my shopping behaviors and like why I was shopping, why I was doing what I was doing had a lot less to do with just like, oh, you just need a budget or oh, you just need to set up this automation and do this and do that. It was more ingrained in toxic mindsets and the inability to handle and regulate uncomfortable emotions. But
Yeah.
of course, like you go out and you start Googling, like, how to stop impulse shopping, how to stop overspending, how to heal compulsive buying. And frankly, it's just a bunch of old white men who are like, just stop. Like, it's so easy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're like, thank you so much. That's so helpful. I say that like very sarcastically. But I just started to realize like, there's no advice out here that actually addresses why I'm doing what I'm doing. Unsubscribing from emails and unfollowing people and deleting my credit card autofill, like, sure, they're supportive and they're a good place to start, but they're not actually addressing the root of like
Right.
why I'm doing what I'm doing. And that just kind of set off like a decade long journey for me of really diving into both the worlds of personal finance and also personal development and blending them all together. But I would say like probably 5-ish years ago around COVID, I really started to sense I just had been working a corporate job this entire time. I switched jobs, just went into corporate, thought I was just going to work a corporate job for 30 years. And COVID hits and COVID happens. And I just started talking about money very casually on Instagram. My
Yeah.
husband and I, like, we got our student loans paid off and we started making like substantial progress with our money. And I just thought, I'll just make a page and just start talking about it and just see if anybody like really cares. I don't know if anyone will. Turns
Mhm.
out some people did. They were like, hey, how'd you do that? Can you help me? But the
Yeah.
thing that kept kind of coming through the cracks, like in secret and like emails and DMs was like spending. Like, Paige, like I'm in credit card debt or I'm hiding debt from my partner or I can't afford, like, I want to start investing, but I can't because I'm spending it all.
Yeah.
And I just started to notice like this perfect storm that was really brewing about 5 years ago, not only with COVID, I think that COVID was an external factor that tipped a lot of people into shopping and overspending because we were just all trapped in our homes and couldn't go anywhere, but also too with just the vast advancements in technology, how much the internet has changed our shopping, how much, companies like Amazon and fast fashion, Shein and Temu have changed our shopping. And then also social media is such a huge, huge one. TikTok started to blow up about 5 years ago. And the impacts that social media has on our spending and consumption is just wild and insane. We can get into that. But I just was like, okay, something is happening here. Like
Mhm.
a storm's a brewing and people are struggling with this and no one is talking about it and no one has solutions that actually work. But I've been through this. I know how hard it is. I know how frustrating it feels to just have somebody be like, just stop. It's so easy when it's really not. And so that's when I created Overcoming Overspending. And that was about 5 years ago. And from there, it's just kind of taken off and turned into this whole big community of women who are just working to, become better spenders and build wealth in the process.
Love that. I had so many things I wanted to ask you in the middle
I know
of
that
all
was a
that
very long, like I took you through it there. So
of it. I'm
sorry.
just like, "Oh my gosh, I have all these questions." So, let's talk about some of the root issues that you have found with overspending. And I do want to put this out there like this is a journey that I've been on and I am not on the fully on the other side by any means, but like for example, am a multiple six-figure earner and I am nowhere near where I'd like to be with investing and savings. And I know it's because I've gotten myself into stupid situations from like impulse travel, impulse shopping, or travel that makes me feel like I'm a baddie, but then
Mm,
I'm like, wow, but now the investments that I want, right? So I really had some come to Jesus this last, my husband and I, I would say we've really changed our lifestyle the last 2 years. But I mean, I look back and I'm like, oh, so much of that money could be an investment right now or another business that's making us money, but we spent it away on stuff. And I think that this is really common in online too is like these people are making so much money, but they don't have anything to show for themselves. And I would love to kind of hear your opinion kind of weaved in about this particular phenomenon and like these root issues that
Yeah. I know this is gonna be bouncing back and forth between you and I being like, I have so much to say. I have so much to say. Strap in. Here we go. Okay. So, first of all, I just want to validate what you're saying that this is so common. I mean, I just want to say that a lot of people hear the name of my brand. And I always like to make this distinction from the very start because I believe that spending is abundant. I believe that money is a tool and spending is the act through which you inject value and beauty into your life. But just like anything, we need that balance between spending now in the present and saving for the future. And so many of the women, like a lot of people think that I work with a lot of people who are paycheck to paycheck or on the verge of bankruptcy, but most of the women in my community are just like you. They are smart, they're highly educated, they are ambitious, they're high earning, but money almost kind of feels like a quicksand kind of situation where it's like just as fast as it's coming in, it's going right back out. And a lot of this has to do with so much of our past history with money. So when I was kind of telling my story about how I kind of had this recognition of I need to go deeper here and really uncover the root of why I'm doing what I'm doing. The two main things, and I always use the analogy of an iceberg to describe this when I'm talking about money, because if you think about money similar to an iceberg, when most people think about money, how they think about it is they think about only like the 10 to 20% that you can see above the water. And those are things like your external environment and your systems around money, which matter. Those are two important pieces of the puzzle. So that's kind of what I said, making sure that your environment supports you, eliminating just unnecessary triggers that just, require more willpower from you, making sure you have solid systems in place that are supportive to you. Like that all matters. The problem is like that's 90% of the personal finance advice out there. And that's where most people stop.
Yeah,
They
because you
don't
can
go to the deeper
override
part. Yeah, exactly. And so then they're like,
systems I put in place for myself because I was like, "No, I just wanna get it."
yeah, exactly. So like that part right there where you said like, I just want to get it, like giving into the impulses,
Yeah.
that is the part that goes deeper. So that's like when we're looking at like, the mass, the actual mass of the iceberg, the other 80 to 90% underneath the surface of the water. And those two things are mindsets and emotions. Now, there's a lot to say about both of those, and we can really dive deep into both of those. But when we're talking about the root of why you're doing what you're doing, it's always either going to boil down to either a mindset that you have. And when I talk about mindset, I like to break it up into two areas. Your money mindset, which that's a very like hot term that gets thrown a lot around a lot. But the way that I define money mindset is your thoughts and beliefs about money as a construct.
Mhm.
So these are a lot of things that you were probably not even consciously taught. You just picked up on from your environment or your caregivers. So it could be like money is scarce, money is the root of all evil, rich people are evil and greedy. We can't have that, we can't afford that. Happens a lot where so it's like you form these ideas and beliefs about money as a construct. And then the other side of the coin when it comes to mindset is your self-concept and your identity. So it's not the thoughts that you have about money, it's the thoughts that you have about you, yourself, in relation to managing money. And this is really key in the spending space. I want to say this is like spending becomes so ingrained in our identity
Yeah.
where what happens for a lot of us is we come into adulthood and we bucket ourselves into one of two camps or teams. You're either team saver or you're team spender. And a lot of that just has to do with like past evidence that you have. And so what happens for a lot of women is they go through periods like just how I went through, periods of maybe where you're spending a lot, lots of overspending happening. Maybe there's some credit card debt. Maybe there's, like you said, this kind of notion of, oh, I'm not as far along as I think I should be. And what we do to ourselves is we then like slap the spending badge on us and we're like team spending. And that's how you choose to identify moving forward. So instead of seeing spending as a skill, and something that you're doing and something that you can actually get better at over time, we're just like, oh, I'm just a spender and that's just how it is and that's how I'll always be. And I hear this so often in heterosexual relationships where it's like the woman's like, I'm the spender and my husband's the responsible one and he's the saver. And it's not like that in every relationship, but that's kind of
Right.
the more generalized popular dynamic. So when we're talking about root cause, a lot of this has to do with if you have a toxic relationship with money,
Mm-hmm.
subconsciously sabotage it away because it can be technically a resource that maybe is a source of pain for you, maybe is a source of discomfort for you. It's maybe a resource that you associate with a lot of pressure and responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
So subconsciously, you sabotage that by spending it away, or you hold the identity of, I'm a shopper, I'm a spender, I'm, irresponsible with money. And I'm sure this, like the role that identity plays, like
Yeah.
the identities that we hold about ourselves ultimately we make become true. And then there's the other piece of this is the last thing I want to say, and then I'll hand it back over. But what you said I think is really key too, is there also is an element to this of growing your capacity just to have money,
Yes.
and just not being in the mindset of like, just because I have it that means I should spend it.
Yes.
This is why you see, especially for those of us who come from backgrounds where money was more scarce,
Mm-hmm.
either in like a very impoverished situation or just situations where money was very scarce. When you go from a situation like that to making lots of money, so you see this a lot with lawyers, doctors, you see this with professional athletes, you see this with lottery winners. This is why this is why like 40% of lottery winners end up declaring bankruptcy.
Mm-hmm.
It all comes back to this, kind of whiplash of my mindset and my nervous system is set at a certain level with money.
Yeah.
And that's what it knows. It knows debt, it knows overdrafting, it knows barely having any money in the account, or it can just be like, or it's just set at a certain level. And anytime it goes and expands beyond that, what I kind of call and refer to as your money thermostat, which is essentially just kind of like your nervous system working in the background, will always bring it back down. So
Mm-hmm.
there's just a lot of inner work that has to be done in this space, which is why I'm like, you can unsubscribe, you can unfollow. Like, the people get really mad when I say this because they're like, "I'm not saying those things don't help. And I'm not saying they're not helpful, but you have to go deeper ultimately to change the root of this behavior."
Yeah, 1000%. Like I think it's people really struggle with the capacity piece. Like
Mhm.
I really think that's a big thing, and not understanding that, like, I think a lot of people just believe the solution is to make more money and that's how they'll
Yep.
build wealth. And that used to be my mindset for a really long time because I can make money. Like that's not an issue for me,
Yeah.
but it's
It's
either,
keeping it.
like keeping it or nurturing it or whatever you want to call it, right? Like nurturing it, having the capacity to hold it.
Mhm.
And I often I've worked through this, but I often feel like if I have to tell myself no about spending, that it's like I'm depriving myself after I've worked my freaking butt off to make it.
Yes.
It's very interesting.
Yeah. There's and there is a lot at play in this. Like, our environment does play a role in this, and that's kind of like
Yeah.
why I was talking just about like culturally and social media and how all of these things just in our external environment play into this, because this is what I call, it's just an exercise that I call like just waking up to the waters of your world. There's that David Foster Wallace quote where he gives like the parable about the fish where they're like swimming in water and then the other fish swims by and he says like, "Morning boys, how's the water?" And then the other fish like look at each other and they're like, "What the hell is water?" You know what I mean? So you're
Yeah.
like a fish swimming in water, but you don't know you're swimming in water because its vastness in a sense kind of makes it invisible to you. And
Mhm.
that's how our world is in the waters of the consumer culture that we live in, which basically tells you all day, every single day, that if you have to tell yourself no, or if you have to save for something or wait for something, or God forbid, you have to be like, I can't afford that right now, which, like, truly, a lot of people would rather put themselves in a financial pickle than have to admit to themselves or friends and family that they can't afford something. What makes that so painful for us is not like just the math of the situation, the black and white numbers, it's all the significance that we give it, right? It's like, well, what does that say about me? And am I not successful enough? And oh, well, look at her. Like, she's able to do this, or she went on this trip, or she bought this car, or they upgraded their kitchen. Like, I work really hard. I should be able to do that too. And if I can't do that, or if I can't afford that, then like, well, what does it say about me? And so this just shows you that all of this goes so much deeper than just numbers in a spreadsheet. It's
Yeah.
meaning, it's significance, it's us, it's worthiness. It's saying like we live in a culture and a society that basically says like the more you have, the more stuff you have, the more money you have, the more important you are, the more status you have, the more significance you have, the more worth you have. And so this isn't like conscious stuff that everyone's out just saying. It's
No.
all just, it's the water, right? Like I said. So when all of these things are in the background, like
Mhm.
driving your choices and driving your decisions, that's why a lot of the things that we do with money aren't logical. That's why they don't make a lot of sense. That's why people knowingly spend money they know that they don't have, or they spend money that they know is going to be at the expense of their future well being, because the pain and discomfort that they feel, not from the math, but from the meaning, we want to do whatever we can to solve for that and relieve ourselves of
Mhm.
that. So what you're saying is just so incredibly common,
Yeah.
but then what happens is like we do it, we feel bad, then we feel so much shame about it,
Mhm.
and then the shame just has us hiding and digging even deeper and just perpetuating the cycle even more.
Mm. Yeah. So, how do you help people uncover what their how their early programming or their early life experiences are uh, affecting, like how it's affecting their spending or their beliefs around money?
Yeah. So I can walk you through a very tactical exercise that
Okay.
I walk everybody in my community through. But also I want to say this, that you're not going to be able to capture everything from this exercise. Like this is the hard part about this process specifically, is that so much of what you believe about money, you don't even realize is just your belief. And that's what makes money tricky, is because money is so like it's we view it as so black and white. And so you might have what is actually a thought or belief or an opinion about money. And in fact, that's just your opinion.
Mhm.
So, an example I like to give a lot is the term expensive. Like when people go, I'm just giving you this as an example and then I'll walk you through the exercise. But I think this just shows you, like, this just drives home my point of how this is all very like gray and
Yeah.
actually not black and white. So when people say all the time, "Oh my god, that's so expensive. Oh my god, that's so expensive." Right? You've probably said this. If you're a business owner, you've probably had people say this to you about your services and offerings, right? People, "Oh, it's so expensive." When we say that, we think that we are like just stating a fact of the world.
Right.
We're like, this is expensive, right? And
Yeah.
it can even just be so eye opening to realize it's expensive to you.
Yes.
And a lot of people don't like hearing that because it is kind of harsh. But again, it's like just because you say that something is expensive doesn't mean it is. Like you are not the final say
Yeah.
of what is expensive and what is not. There's a lot of things that go into what makes something expensive. And so something that's expensive for me might not be expensive for you. And and a lot of times, like, yes, part of it's kind of about the money, but some of it too is just like, well, what do you value? What's important
Yeah.
to you? How much money do you make? Where is your money thermostat currently set at? Right.
Yeah.
So that's just like a good example of even things that we say so cavalierly sometimes about money that we think this is for sure a fact. Like a lot of times it's actually not a fact.
Mhm.
So that's step one in this process outside of this exercise is anytime that you catch yourself having a thought about money, you hear yourself saying anything about money, speaking about money, pay attention to what it is that you're saying, because I guarantee you that 90% of it is actually your thoughts and beliefs about money,
Yeah.
even if it feels like, oh no, this is true. One exercise that you can do that I find helpful is sit down, take out 3 pieces of paper. I would set out at least 30 minutes for this. And I think it's helpful to evaluate past, present, and future. So on each piece of paper, right, past, present, future. The
Mhm.
past is going to be the one that you're probably able to come up with the most with. But on the paper that says past, I want you to write money was dot, dot,
Mm,
dot. And then just literally like just let your brain dump about thoughts that are coming up for you about the past. Think about how was money talked about when you were a child? What did your education teach you about money? What did your religion teach you about money? How did your caregivers approach money? What were things that they thought were appropriate to spend your money on and not appropriate to spend your money on? Like, there's a lot that you can dredge up here, but really the point of this one is to think about money in terms of your past and then just evaluate what's on the paper and note that looking at your paper and seeing what's on your paper
mm,
from the past. On the present piece of paper, write money is and think of money is dot, 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 and think about how money feels in your present day.
mhm,
And anything that comes up for you there, write all of that on that piece of paper. And then on the third one, future, write money will be dot, dot, dot. And think about money in terms of your future. How much are you going to have? How much do you want to have? What are some things that you want to do with it? What are some things you want to spend it on? What do you think is appropriate to do with it and not appropriate to do with it? And basically, at the end of this exercise, that'll be a good starting point for you to at least start looking and evaluating like, what are my money beliefs? Another good one, too, is just to start, like, if you're kind of having a hard time with this, is
mhm,
just to start with how money makes you feel. Sometimes
mm,
it's hard for us to identify like what our actual thoughts or mindsets are because we don't even consciously notice them because they're just so like we've thought them for so long so automatically that it's hard to even pick up on them. So even starting with, well, how does money make me feel? It makes me
mhm,
feel, let's just say your answer is it makes me feel stressed, it makes me feel overwhelmed, it makes me feel inadequate, it makes me feel behind. Then peeling back one more layer and then saying, okay, why? Like, why does money make you feel overwhelmed? Why does it make you feel inadequate? Why does it make you feel anxious? And see what comes up from there. Because even that will probably mostly be just a lot of thoughts and beliefs rather than actual circumstantial facts about your situation.
mm. This is so fascinating to me. Do you think there's a difference between how money makes people feel and how spending makes people feel, or do you think it's one and the same?
I think I think so. Okay. I think they can be different. I see this a lot where someone will actually have a very, let's call it just unhealthy or very like avoidant or toxic relationship with money.
Mhm,
But then the spending feels very like fun and carefree in a sense where they're just like, and I'm going to do whatever I want with it. And I'm just going to go use this to like have fun and like YOLO and live my life. Right. So, actually, what's driving that overspending and a lot of those impulsive behaviors is really the fact that you have this resource in your life that you don't have a good relationship with. And
mhm,
this is what I like to tell everybody like, you have a relationship with money whether you think you do or you don't. Like, sometimes I've had people tell me, like, oh, well, I don't think I do because I don't really like pay much attention to it. And like, eh. So that means you have a relationship with it, but your relationship is just very avoidant, right?
mhm,
It's just kind of like, I'm in a relationship with you, but I'm just not really going to pay attention to you. So they can align. Sometimes I see that where money scarcity, this isn't really my world, and I don't really have a lot of these people in my world, but toxic relationships with money, scarcity with money can come to the surface and bubble to the surface for different people in different ways. For some people, it's like, I'm going to go spend it all. And then for other people on the other end of the spectrum, these are the people that I call the money hoarders who
yeah,
have a deep like fear and scarcity around money. But their way that it kind of manifests is they can't bring themselves to spend it. Getting them to part with it is beyond painful. They don't ever spend their money on anything. The problem though is that in the personal finance world, we deem those people as like, oh, well, they're financially responsible because they're
yeah,
not spending, even though their emotional experience around money is the exact same as the impulse shopper and the overspender. It just
mhm,
manifests different ways.
mhm. Yeah, I had, my grandparents were very much like that. I mean, my grandpa they went through the depression, but
Yeah. A lot of people of that generation are.
Yeah, and now my grandma is like has so much money because my grandfather died, but she still behaves that way. And I'm
Yeah.
like, "You're in your late 90s, like, lady, you're gonna kick it soon. Like, this you can't take this with you."
No, my mother-in-law is like that. My in-laws are very, very wealthy. I mean, they have enough money to
Mhm.
spend in 10 lifetimes. And my mother-in-law, like, does the most irrational
Yeah.
she'll spend an hour of her time going to 4 different grocery stores to save 15 cents on a loaf of bread.
Yeah, my grandma will, like, wash her Ziploc bags so that she doesn't have to buy new ones, and I'm like, I mean, that's
But
great for the
that's what I'm
environment,
telling
but it's
you.
like yes.
That's such a this is such a good point in illustration to just
Mhm.
drive home the point of whether we're talking about somebody on that I call this the spending spectrum
Yeah.
in my work. So it's like overspenders and impulse shoppers are at one end, money hoarders are at the other end. But this is such a good example to show you that so much of what we do with money is not rational. Like it makes no rational sense. Like you have millions in the bank and you're spending your precious time and energy that you can't get back to save 15 cents. Like nothing about that is logical,
Right.
but money really isn't at the end of the day as much as we want to think it is.
Do you think like, I've seen other people refer to money kind of like you think of it as a person, it mimics your relationship with your like, I don't know your orientation to this or anything, but it can mimic your relationship with your father or your mother or like, what are your thoughts about that? Or you
Well,
just your
I think
ability to receive love. Now that kinda resonates with me, but
yeah.
I'm wondering what you think about those things.
Yeah, well, I think that a lot of that does come into play just in your money past and your money history. Like oftentimes, like whatever you want to shadow work or inner child work, things that you felt like you were deprived of or needs that you didn't feel like were met in childhood will often come out as adults in a lot of different ways in our relationships and our eating habits. And yes, of course, with our money and our spending habits. So I'll just give you a couple examples that I see with women in my community. So, there's a lot of examples that I can think of women who felt like they were never really like loved or accepted by a parent. It could be a dad or a mom. And the way that they try to they now use money as a tool
Mhm.
or as a means as an adult to try and buy belonging into just different circles
Mm,
now that they're adults. So they try to just portray certain images,
yeah.
travel a certain way, live a certain way, drive a certain car, have certain designer labels that almost kind of makes them feel like they're in the in crowd, right? Like they belong. Like I belong here. And a lot of that stems from the fact that as a child, they just felt like they didn't, that they didn't belong. Or another one that I see a lot is just growing up in households where you were just told no all the time. No,
Yeah.
we can't do that. We're not doing that. We can't afford that. Don't even ask. Like just getting in trouble for even asking for, just like, hey, can I buy this or can I do this? And so how that comes out is you just get so sick of being told no.
Yeah, you don't
And
wanna
then when you
deprive
become an
yourself.
adult with your own money, you're like, I'm never gonna tell myself no, like, no one's ever gonna tell me no again, and no becomes this, like, dirty, toxic word that we were kinda talking about earlier, where no gets associated with, like, deprivation and frugality, and I'm
Yeah.
never I'm an adult now with free will and my own money, and I'm never gonna tell myself no, and that can also get you into a lot of trouble. So,
Yeah.
much of this, like, relationships with parents and or caregivers or whoever it was raised you, anything that you feel like you didn't get in childhood, needs that weren't met, you'll ultimately go and try to meet those needs through a lot of different means. And money is certainly one of them. Yeah.
So how do you that's incredible. It makes me think about what I've been working on. I don't like to tell my daughter no. Now, when I say that, I don't mean like authority wise or parenting wise, but it's like I don't want her to be deprived like how I was. And I've really shifted it and really started to be okay to say no to her.
Hmm.
But I'm always very nervous how I do it because I don't want her to have an unhealthy relationship with money. So a lot of times what I say is I'm not willing to spend our money on that right now,
Yes, that's so
right?
good. How old is your
Or,
daughter?
she's 11
Okay.
and, I have taught in because to me expensive, I see it the same way, right? Like, it's really the value you put on something.
Mhm.
And something I might think is expensive, somebody else might not, and vice versa. And
Mhm.
even there's times when my mom, she's built a lot of wealth for herself, she will say that certain things are expensive that I would have no problem spending
Mhm.
money on, but we have different values in the
Yes.
things that we spend money on. And so I have explained that to her, but we've gotten ourselves in some hot water where I've spent money on things that I should have said no or maybe dialed it down on the experience or whatever, but it was like I was trying to give her what I didn't have.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
now I'm working on being okay with saying no, just being careful how I do it so that it's not making her feel like we're broke because we're far from broke. You know what I mean? I grew up in a house where I was very aware of our money situation. I was the
Yeah.
oldest, and it was very stressful. We heard no all the time. Our clothes were on layaway. My dad, towards the end, before my parents got divorced, my dad was like gambling our rent.
Mm.
My mom gave me money to like hide. And so it was a lot of like money scarcity and a lot of deprivation of like experiences and fun and just anything
Yeah.
really. And so when I started making a lot of money, I like went ham for a
Yeah.
couple of years. And I'm at this point where you were when you were like, what exactly do I have to show? Nothing. I need to rectify this. And so we've been on a really powerful healing journey the last couple of years. And it's like everything it happens in layers too. That's the thing is that it's not like you figure it all out and then it's not a problem anymore. You discover these little pockets of that's why I do that, right? And you can shift and heal that particular thing, but it's very layered and nuanced and it's a journey. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What I tell people a lot, which remind me, I want to come back. Can we come back to this parenting
Yes,
conversation?
because I think it's
Because
so important.
what you just said, I hear like literally, Andrea, it's probably
I
one of the
bet
top
every
things because
day.
a lot of the women in my audience are moms. And it's like, it's probably top three things that I hear about spending is like, I'm not even spending all this money on my kids or on me, I'm spending it on my kids. But
Mhm.
I do want to say just that I think can be helpful for what you just said, just a helpful reframe that really helps me is we tend to think about money like it's a box that you check and then you get to check the box and then you just get to say, great, like did that, don't ever have to worry about this anymore, can just move on. But if you choosing to have a healthy relationship with money is a choice that most grown adults never make. They go through their entire lives thinking money is black and white. This is what it is, not even realizing that 90% of the things that run through their head about money are just their own thoughts and beliefs and aren't even true. So they don't even slow down to challenge them and question them. And then they go through their whole lives having just a terrible, toxic relationship with money that feels awful and terrible. And to me, I'm like, that is the most important thing. The most important thing is how you feel
Yeah.
just in your everyday and how you feel about money. But
Mhm.
with that, what you have to understand is this is not just a box that you get to check and be like, okay, great, I checked the box. I don't ever have to worry about this ever again. You need to be thinking about money how you think about your health, right? Like if you want to take care of your health, you understand that this is a lifelong thing. Like I have to be committed to certain mindsets and behaviors and habits for my entire life. Like it would be wonderful if we could just go to the gym for a month and check the gym box and then be like, okay, well, done with that forever. But what we know is like with health, it's like if you don't use it, you lose it, right? Like you can build up a bunch of muscle, but then if you stop going and lifting the heavy weights and pushing yourself, like it's going to atrophy and you're going to lose that muscle.
Yeah.
And so with health, we understand like this is a consistent commitment that I have to make for my entire life. This is not a box I just get to check and then never worry about again. And that is how you have to view money and your relationship with money. If you want to have a healthy relationship with
Yeah.
money, you have to view it as that of like, this is going to be something that I'm going to have to work on my entire life. And what I
Mm.
tell a lot of people is like, listen, also don't expect this to be like a quick one and done either. That's why my coaching program is a year long because I tell people, I'm like, this is not just something you get to come in and fix in a month. Like you are overriding of beliefs and programming and habits, and you're not going to fix that in a month. Like, I'm sorry. I know we're very impatient nowadays and we live in instant gratification nation, but it's like, that's just not how it works. It's not how it
Yeah.
works. So, can I come back to the parenting thing?
Yeah, let's do
Okay.
it.
Okay. So, I think what you like hit the nail on the head, which I just want to reiterate that with what you say with your daughter.
Yeah.
Because the number one thing that I hear from moms is who grew up like in a situation similar to yours is I don't want to scar my kids over money the way that my parents scarred me with money.
Yeah.
And how that is manifested is them totally going to
Okay.
the other side of the spectrum and never saying no ever to anything. And then they become the money well that their kids always come to and think mom's got it, she'll pay for it. Doesn't matter what it is. Like, and I'm not saying this is you. I'm just giving examples of what I've seen.
Yeah.
Just, trips to Sephora and vacations at age appropriate ages, vacations with friends and luxury skincare and
Mm,
Lulu this and designer that for their 12-year-olds.
yeah.
And they're like, Paige, I don't even spend much money on myself, but like my teenager is bankrupting me, right? Because I can't tell them no.
And think
So,
about the belief system they're instilling.
yeah.
So this is interesting that you're saying this because when I used to practice as a marriage and family therapist, I did a lot of family therapy and parenting. And this is common with any kind of trauma. Like you either fall into you repeat the pattern or you do the polar opposite, but it's so extreme that it still does a lot of damage. It's just from the other end. And so I used to talk to parents about you need to come to the middle, right? You can pull from here and you can pull from your experience here. It probably wasn't all bad. There was probably some positive things about maybe how authoritative or whatever it is, and you need to come to the middle, right? And we used to do work on that. And I definitely will say that some of that wouldn't apply to me, but it's this own internal dialogue that I've had to really work through of I don't ever want her to be scared about our finances. I don't ever want her to know if we have debt. I don't ever want her to know that I don't ever want her to be worried that she's not going to eat or something, right?
Mhm.
Which is kind of crazy because that's never been the case in
Yeah.
her life, but it's my own stuff. And I've had to really become aware of times when I overdid things that she didn't even give a shit about, quite frankly. Like
Hmm.
she wouldn't have cared if we wouldn't have done the extra 3 days of vacation. I was more trying to fulfill something for myself.
Yes.
And we're really coming to that place where I'm more grounded, and she is at the age where she's asking for things. Whereas I would say when she was smaller, she really didn't ask for a lot of things. And my response is that's not something I'm willing to spend money on. But if you want to spend your money, you're welcome to do so. She's allowed to do like gig work for me.
Mm-hmm.
She does have a small allowance she collects every week. If she really wants something, I'll come up with a list of projects that she can do to like get that thing. But she has to give an energy exchange for things that I'm not willing to just go out and buy her.
Yeah. I think that's fantastic. And I think the biggest thing, again, like age appropriate, but I'll say this, I have a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
So I'm like a baby parent, right? Like I've only been a parent for 3 years, but we're already teaching our daughter just the concept of spending. Like when we go to places and we buy something, it's even like talking her, okay, like now we're going to go up to the counter and we're going to give them our money and then they're going to give us this thing that we want. Because that's ultimately what spending is. It's an exchange of value. It's like our money has value, the things that we're buying have value, and we're exchanging that value. I think as your kids get older, and again, like, of course, age appropriate, but something that I think is important to teach your kids is simply just that your spending or your family's spending is an act of prioritization. It's like this is how much money we have. And I'm not saying you have to walk your kids through these numbers, but it's just like this is how much money we have. And at the end of the day, that is not an endless well,
Yeah. Yeah.
contrary to what you might think. It is a finite pool, and this is how much we have. And within what we have, there are certain priorities, things that are really important to us as a family that we need to make sure that we can pay for and take care of. Necessities like making sure we have a place to live, making sure we have food to eat, making sure we pay all of our bills so we have water and heat and cool air. And then after we do all of that, there's going to be a certain amount left. And a phrasing that I like to use, and again, use this in addition to the phrasing that you have given, which I think is amazing phrasing of like, I'm just not willing to spend that right now. I think instead of saying, we can't afford that, a phrasing that I like to offer to parents is, that's not a priority for us right now,
Yeah.
because it shows them that there are other things that it's like, we're not broke. It's not that we don't have money. It's that there are things that are more important to this family that our money needs to be going towards rather than whatever it is that you're asking for the money for. It's not, we can't afford it. That's not a priority for us right now, or we're choosing not to spend our money on that right now. Instead, we're choosing to spend it on not on X, but on Y. Start teaching your kids that all of this is a trade off, right? Like a dollar
Yeah.
spent on A cannot be spent on B. And so it's not like, "Oh, we're broke and we can't afford it. No. And oh my God, like, I can't believe that that you would even ask." This is you as a parent teaching your child, which they're going to have to do as an adult in the real world once they start making their own money. Like, there's going to be a lot of things that you want. And most people in most financial situations can't go out and get everything that they want all at once. It's a practice of prioritization. It's saying,
Yeah.
I have these things that matter to me that are important to me, even if those things are, just meeting your bare necessities. And this is going to have to wait, or I'm going to have to save up for it.
Mhm.
Or, it's not a never, it's just a not right now. And in conversations like that, I also urge you to say to your kids, again, just the not right now. It's a not right now, not a never. So, like, if your
Yeah.
kid comes to you and they want something, and either that you don't have the money to pay for it or they don't have the money to pay for it in a situation like that, talk to them, help them through the situation. Be like, okay, this is how much it costs. This is how much you have. What's your plan? Like, let's come up with a plan together. Kids are way smarter than I think. Like, sometimes I hear people like saying, I can't do that. I can't talk to my kids about
No.
that. Like, talking to your kids about money is one of the best things that you can do for them as a parent. And you can, in my opinion, you can do it way younger than you think that you can.
You can totally. I mean, when she was like 5, we had a very small allowance she'd wanna go to, like, the dollar store, and so I'd say, "Okay, your budget is $5."
Mhm.
And we'd go around and she'd say, "Well, how much?" She didn't fully know. So I'd say, "Okay, like, let's do the math." So I'd tell her to tell me off the label, like, how much it is, and I'd say, "Okay, so $5 minus this equals this much left. So you have,
Mhm.
whatever, $3 and whatever cents left. You could probably pick 2 or 3 more things." And we would go through and work through her budget. So, I mean, we've really been open about money the whole time. And last summer, we read an age appropriate money book where she learned about investing. And I mean, I learned a
Great,
ton from the
yeah.
book too, but
Yeah.
just so that the language doesn't feel so, I mean, for me, that language is still very foreign because we didn't really talk about money,
Mhm.
and it was just more those things I experienced. And then when my mom had a career that she started earning really great money, like, I didn't know what she was doing behind the scenes. Like, I didn't really have any education about it. It's not, unless you openly talk about it, your kids aren't going to learn unless they're inclined to learn about it on their own somehow, right? It's
Mhm.
just not. So then you walk into the world and you just don't even really know what to do with your money when you start earning it if you haven't had that kind of education or your parents haven't been open with you about it.
No. I mean, that was my parents all through high school. I worked a waitressing job that I would just like, I would leave the restaurant every night with, 70 to $80 worth of just like cash tips in my hand as like a 16-year-old. You know what I mean? And nobody was talking to me about the money I was making. Nobody sat me down to be like, maybe you should save some of that. I mean, really, that's kind of where my spending started. I mean, I would, I spent all of that. I didn't save any of it. Like, and I'm not blaming anybody for that, but as a teenager, it would have been nice to have somebody be like, "Why don't we open up a savings account? maybe let me just teach you about the concept of compound interest, right? If you just take a third of that and invest it, by the time you're 60, it will have grown to this much, right? Like even just teaching, I mean, the only reason I started contributing to even a 401k account at that first job was because the HR lady like practically made me check the box. When I was doing my onboarding,
Good. Thank
I
God
was
for
like,
that
I didn't
HR
even
lady.
know what 401k meant. I was like, what's this 401k? And she goes, just check it. Just check the box to
Yeah.
do the minimum contribution to get your match. I was okay. And I just checked it. And I'm thankful that she made me do it. But that's what I'm saying. Like, you just don't know what you don't know. As a parent, like one of the best things that you can do for your kid, and I think for your family dynamics, is not to foster the family environment that's like money is taboo. It's inappropriate to talk about money. We don't talk about it. We just don't bring it up. Or like, it's like, no, we're going to talk about it. We're going to have constructive conversations around it. They might not all be fun, but that way you're launching your kids and they do have a solid foundation set for when they start making and managing their own money.
Yeah, it's yes, I agree with you. So what are you do how are you supporting these moms because it is a crazy epidemic right now of let's go to Sephora. I mean, we go to Sephora and she window shops and if she knows if she wants something from Sephora, she's spending her own money.
Yeah.
But
Well, I'll say
right?
this. I'm not, I want to make this clear. I'm not a parenting expert. Okay. And like I
Yeah.
said, I'm a baby parent myself. But I think what I've seen be most effective in the woman that I'm coaching, and I think this is probably how I'm going to handle it with my daughter, is I think getting your kids to start managing their own money as soon as possible is the best course of action. And as a parent, you get to decide how they're coming to that money, whether
Yeah.
you're paying them an allowance for doing work or not doing work, or they're helping you with, whatever. But I think somehow, some way, your kid getting their own money
Yeah.
and you having them start paying for discretionary things like that. I'm not saying paying for everything, right? But if your 13-year-old wants to go up to Sephora
Mhm.
and drop $150 on skincare, I don't really think you're serving her by mom floating that bill for her, because then she's just going to learn like, oh, this is normal and this is the standard. And I can always just count on mom to float my skincare that I don't even need as a 13-year-old, right?
Totally.
So it's like getting their own money in their own hands as fast as possible and telling them, you can I'm here for guidance and support. I will guide you and help you and support you in this. I can help you make decisions, but ultimately this is up to you. And letting your kids make mistakes with money. Like
Yeah.
that's how we all learn. I mean, we all ultimately learn the most about money by making mistakes with money. So I think if you're, making mistakes with money at 14 years old, the stakes are a lot less high than if you're 44,
Yeah,
right? And you're probably
absolutely.
making mistakes on a much larger scale. Um, what I tell moms, and then the other part of it is just handling the discomfort that will come as a parent when kid either makes a mistake or spends it all and wants more. Like you have to maintain those financial boundaries with them and honestly let them feel the pain of what happens when you overspend.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
my
mean, that's how
daughter
they
has
learn, right?
experienced that. She's made some, what she considers mistakes. She'll after, I actually don't even think it was worth that, and,
Which is
um
so good for her to realize.
yes, and so we have a conversation. I'm like, "Okay, well, what can you do differently next time? Is there like, can you ask yourself some questions before you put it in the cart, or can you how do you wanna handle that?" And she's pretty reflective, so she'll come up with some thoughts or whatever. So, it has been good, and because she has an allowance and she does some gig work for me, she understands that what working hard for your money looks like too, that it's not I mean, you still have to do an energy or, like, a value exchange to get the money,
Mm.
and so she understands and she's made spending mistakes and then she's like, "I scrubbed your whole bathroom and now I don't even want this." And I'm like, "Okay, I said, I know this sucks, but what can you take from this? Because we all have gone through this before, right?" And so I just think every mistake makes her a better spender
Yes.
for sure.
I think that's another thing that I think is really big with parents is like not I can't even tell you how many women that I've worked with who have like so much just financial trauma from their parents shaming them around their
Yeah.
own mistakes with money that they made. And I think, like, again, like knowing that money it's a skill. It's like a game. So what you're doing is you're having your kids start to learn how to play the game. And
Yeah.
anytime you start learning how to play a game, you're going to be terrible at it because you've never played it before and you don't know what the rules are and the dynamics and the players and the strategies and like you don't know any of that. It's like it would be like sitting down to play chess for the first time and no one's ever taught you how to play chess. Like of course you're going to be terrible at it. But I think none of us really think about money in that way. We don't think about it like a game or a skill. Again, we think about it like, oh, well, you should just know this. Like I always say, we think about money like breathing or blinking. Like no one had to taught you how to breathe or blink. You just came into the world breathing and blinking. Money's not that way. There's a lot that you have to learn, and how you learn is by screwing up and making mistakes. I guarantee you anyone listening to this, the most valuable lessons you've ever learned about money probably came from the biggest mistakes
Yeah.
you've ever made with money. So as
Yeah.
a parent, one of the best things that you can do for your kids is to A, give them an environment where they feel safe making mistakes, and then B, not making them feel bad and shameful for making those mistakes. And I think exactly what you do with your daughter, prompting them of like, well, what did we learn here? Right? Like helping them extract the lesson
Mhm.
from the failure. Because if they don't, what's going to happen is they're just going to feel shame around it.
Yeah.
And then exactly this pattern that we talked about at the beginning, your kid's just going to go into team I just must not be good at this, and I must just not be good with money. And then they're gonna go through their entire adult life thinking that, avoiding it, having a terrible relationship with money. So make them feel safe to make mistakes. When they do make mistakes, don't shame them for it and help them pull the lessons out of it so that they can do better the next time that they go to play the game.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, I'm gonna ask one last question. So, what's your stance on like budgeting and spending when you're getting out of debt? Because there's these coaches that are very deprivation driven, right? And
Yep.
I find that when I deprive myself so much, especially because I work so hard and that it really can send me into a spot where I will actually end up messing it up really badly.
Yes.
So I'm curious what your like how you mentor people to get out of debt
Mhm.
and manage their budget and their spending. What's your
Yeah.
stance?
Yeah. Well, I'll just say this. So I don't in my world, I don't use I don't use the B word budget because so many people have such a like a visceral
Well, I like
negative
that because budget is
association to it. So
yes.
what I call it in my world, and you can adopt this if you want, is I call it a money map because that's truly how I view this. I just view it like you're at a certain place right now and there's somewhere that you want to go. And just how if you were on a road trip, you would have a map that gives you directions. That's all we're doing when we're creating a budget or, a money map is it's just this is where you are, this is where you're trying to go, and this is what's going to get you there. I think whether you're in debt or not, you should have a
Yeah.
money map. I just think it's helpful to have. Again, when I'm talking about systems, like that's a big part of the system. But even specifically with debt, it becomes even more important. That goes and illustrates the point that we were talking about earlier about how a lot of actual like what are thoughts and beliefs that you have about money are just your thoughts and beliefs.
Yeah.
So a lot of people do kind of the take like the Dave Ramsey route just because he's just a very like loud and prominent voice in the personal finance space, especially when it comes to getting out of debt. It's like kind of like what he's known for, right?
Yeah.
And to your point, his method is very like
It's intense. I did
it's
it.
intense, like cut out just
Yes.
no discretionary spending. His like famous saying is like you better not see the inside of a restaurant unless you're working there, if you're in debt, like stuff like that, right?
Yes.
And I will tell you this, I've worked with many women who use the Dave Ramsey method, came out of it. Truly, I call it like debt PTSD, like had like debt PTSD because it was such a traumatic experience for them. And then they ultimately boomerang back into debt
But
because, yeah, because
you're almost creating the same trauma from
Yeah.
childhood almost,
Yeah.
right? Like
Mhm.
deprivation, no, like all the
You're
time.
depriving yourself for so long, and then you come out of it, and it's kind of like the rubber band effect where, like,
Yes,
you
crazy.
snap to the total other side where you're like, "I've been living this way for, however long." For a lot of people, it's years, and I'm ready to have some fun, and I'm ready to live my life, and, like, here we go, and then 2 years later, you're back in $20,000 worth of credit card
Yeah,
debt.
it's not it doesn't meet in the middle, like, where you're learning the skill of discernment and, like, temperament.
Totally. So here's the analogy I always like to use with getting out of debt. I like to say, I think about getting out of consumer debt. So this is any debt outside of your mortgage, like running a race. Okay. First of all of us are going to have different paths that we're going to take. For some people have to run a 100 marathon or a 100-meter sprint, meaning they don't really have that much debt to pay off. So maybe they're like, yeah, I got like 3 grand on a credit card, like that I just need to get paid off. Like I just need to get this paid off. It's like, okay, you're doing like a 100-meter sprint. Like you don't really, I mean, at least in terms of what I've seen,
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah,
you don't really have that much debt to pay off. You could probably tackle this pretty aggressively and within a month or two, like tops, be done with this. Other people are running a marathon. Other people are like, I have 50K in credit card debt and I have a car loan and I have $80,000 of student loans and I have a personal loan that I took out to consolidate the last time that I went into credit card debt. And so I'm like, okay, so you're running a marathon.
yeah,
So you will not be running as fast as the person who's doing the 100-meter sprint.
yeah,
You need to, if you were running as fast as they were running, you would never finish. And this is exactly what you were saying. It's like when you push yourself too hard or too fast, and, for the sake of this analogy, you're running too fast for how far you actually have to go, you will burn yourself out and then you never finish the race. And so to me, I'm like, if you are somebody who has to run a marathon, you need to gauge your pace based on how long you have to go. If getting out of debt for you is going to be a 4, 5, 6 year ordeal, then it's okay for you to maybe not be as aggressive or to build some luxuries in or to make sure that you're taking care of yourself mentally and emotionally so
yeah,
that you're not a shell of yourself when you get to the end of the process, right?
yeah,
A budget is what helps you determine like how aggressive you can be. And also too, I just want to say that just to stick with this analogy, pace. Some people are just like in real life, some people are just faster runners than other people.
yeah,
And in this analogy, that's income. Some people make a lot more money than other people. So maybe you have a marathon in front of you, but you also make $300,000 a year
yeah,
and you can throw a lot of money at your debt. And so you're sitting there being like, I can be more aggressive because I just have a bigger shovel. I have more to throw at this versus somebody who maybe has the same amount of debt and they make half as much as you. And so it's going to take them twice as long. So all of these things factor in. That's why, like I say, a debt payoff journey is like a snowflake. Like there will be no debt payoff journey that is exactly the same. And
mhm,
that's why, again, any advice in the personal finance space, you always have to take it with a grain of salt because you have to understand, like, take a Dave Ramsey, for example.
mhm,
He's talking to millions, tens of millions of people on a weekly basis. And so he has to come up with a marketable system
yeah,
that he can give to everyone in his community, but there's no possible way that system is going to work perfectly for every single person.
yeah,
That's why you have to have the discernment to look at a system, whether it's his or someone else's, and always know that you have permission to be like, what do I like about this? What do I not like about this? What would work really well for me in my lifestyle? What would not work for me?
mm,
Some people are like, "Uh, you're not going to be able to pry my weekly date nights with my husband out of my cold, lifeless, dead hands. Like it's
right,
happening. Right. And I know, and my big thing is just know the trade offs when you're getting out of debt.
right,
So, an example that I can give, it's top of mind. I was coaching somebody the other day and she's like, my family takes this trip every year and the trip is $5,000 and I'm just not willing. Like, I'm just
yeah,
like, I feel guilty because I feel like we shouldn't be doing the trip because we're in debt and we're trying to get out of debt, but also like I don't want to give it up.
Yeah,
And
it's like
so
your
it was like,
thing.
okay, well, what's the trade-off? Like, if you do this trip for the next 3 or 4 years, how long is that going to extend your debt payoff date in terms of time and extra interest paid? And there's so many, like Undebt It is a good one. It's free. Like literally just go to Google and Google Undebt It. But
Mhm.
there's so many amazing softwares now that where you can just go type in your debt, play around with numbers and scenarios, and it'll tell you like it'll tell you how long it's going to take you to get out of debt. And so it's like,
Mhm.
okay, so if we do the trip every year for the next 3 years, and that's $15,000 that we could be putting towards debt, what does that look like? How much longer does it take us to get out of debt? How much more interest are we paying? And we plopped it in and it was like, okay, it's going to add 4 months to your debt payoff journey and an extra $1,000 in interest. And she was like, okay, like
It's
I'm
worth it to her.
yeah, I'm cool. I'm totally cool with that. And then like once you just know the trade-offs, then you can make an empowered choice
Yeah, that's really
of
good.
saying, am I willing to make this trade-off? Yes or no. If I am, great. And if I'm not, that's okay too. But at least you're making that choice instead of just somebody being like, this is bad and you should never do it. And
Mhm.
you're wrong if you take this trip or if you do this thing while you're getting out of debt. It's all a trade-off. You're trading time and you're trading interest. So the
Yeah.
question that you need to be asking is, am I willing to make that time and trade-off? And your money map is what helps you answer that.
Amazing. Okay, what is your handle so people can flock to your Instagram?
It's pretty simple. It's overcoming_overspending on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. You'll be able to
Love
find me.
it.
I also have a podcast too. So I'm guessing if you're here, you're probably a podcast person. My podcast historically has been called the Money Love Podcast. It's now called the Overcoming Overspending Podcast. So just anywhere you listen to podcasts, you'll be able to find that too.
Amazing. Thank you for being here. This has been insane. I could ask you 50 more questions, but I know you have a life and I feel like we've really put a dent in some things and I'm just really grateful for your time and your wisdom
This has
and
been
just
great.
all
Thank you
that
for
you're
having
doing
me.
in the world. It's incredible. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, guys, we'll see you in the next episode.